is a while now. I know squad in a land of bar. Police have to run from police. What is this from police? We don't know about the thing bizarre. Right now the force needs CPR. It look like a wound they are gonna leave us here. Officer, you can't throw gas in a fire. Cause the people are go ball and go fit the tire. Then the church have to go kneel and go in a prayer. When the people are rebel and I said them a suffer. A criminal elements alone and of the law. So why are the majority I call you murderer? Me think we need for you hurry up and solve that puzzle, yeah. Remember our duty is the first of all the law. No matter how it rough, you have to think before you draw. When the people them know it, you then the criminal applaud. So no kick off me door when you come in on me yard. Me know.
And now the details of the news. The federal government has set a target of reaching 20 million children through the homegrown school feeding program by 2026, describing it as both an educational investment and a national security strategy. Vice President Kashim Shettima made this announcement at the National Policy Forum on the institutionalization and implementation of the Renewed Hope National Homegrown School Feeding Program held in Abuja. The forum was hosted by the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion in collaboration with Action Aid Nigeria and other stakeholders. Represented by the Special Advisor to the President on Economic Affairs, Office of the Vice President, Kolade Fasua, Shettima said the expansion under President Bola Tinubu's Renewed Hope agenda was the boldest yet in the history of the intervention. He explained that the program, relaunched earlier this year, is designed to improve school enrollment and learning outcomes while creating a guaranteed daily market for smallholder farmers, women entrepreneurs and local processors. While acknowledging that sustaining nationwide coverage could cost as much as 1 trillion naira, the Vice President argued that the initiative should not be seen as a drain on public finances, but as a nation-building investment. The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASAN, has identified the reasons why Nigeria's state-owned refineries are failing. The association said the refineries were not failing because Nigerians lack the skills, but as a result of political interference which denied workers the tools, resources and enabling environment to deliver effectively. The association's president, Festus Osifo, who stated this at the ongoing 4th PENGASAN and Labour Summit, Hills 2025 in Abuja, also identified widespread corruption and mismanagement as reasons for the failure of the refineries. Osifo said Nigeria's energy future requires modern skilled manpower, and there is the urgent need for tools, policy stability and supportive reforms to drive growth in the energy sector. According to him, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Nigerian workers successfully operated offshore platforms after expatriates departed. He said the development had proven that the country possessed skilled manpower capable of sustaining global standard energy production without disruption. He also expressed concerns over frequent changes to petroleum laws, warning they could discourage vital investments. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has announced that more than 500,000 Nigerians have completed their online pre-registration for the continuous voter registration exercise days after its relaunch. This was revealed in Abuja during the official flag-off of the INEC's nationwide sensitization campaign aimed at boosting public participation in the voter registration process. The chairman of the commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who was represented by National Commissioner May Agbamuchi Mbu, described the turnout as a strong indication that Nigerians remain eager to participate in the democratic process. The chairman announced that the CVR exercise, which began with online pre-registration on Monday, August 18, 2025, will enter its physical phase on Monday, August 25, 2025. From that date, both those who've pre-registered online and new applicants can complete their registration at INEC local government and state offices nationwide, where their biometrics will be captured. Yakubu has called on all eligible Nigerians, especially young people, newly eligible voters and those needing to update or transfer their voter information to take full advantage of the ongoing CVR exercise. The exercise will be conducted at 811 centers across the country, including all 774 local government area offices and state offices. The Commission has also made special arrangements to ensure accessibility for persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. The Benue State House of Assembly has suspended 4 lawmakers for 6 months over alleged attempts to impeach the Speaker, Ahondona Dajo. The members are Alfred Berger, who represents Makurdi North, his Kian State constituency counterpart, Turner Shimawa, Cyril Ekong of B State constituency, and James Omoro, representing Upper State constituency. The majority leader, Sata Tisa, in a motion of urgent importance, moved for the suspension of the lawmakers for attempting to unsettle the State Assembly with what he'd said was a needless crisis. Following the motion, the Speaker directed the Sergeant-at-Arms to lead the suspended lawmakers out of the chambers. The Speaker of the House, Dajo, further appointed Audu Elias as the new spokesperson of the House following the suspension of Alfred Berger, who had held the position. You're listening to the World News on Today95.1 FM, Voice of the People. After the break, more news, foreign and sports stories. Do stay tuned.
Every day, every hour, when the big stories break, depend on our 24-hour news team to bring you the latest. Today, 95.1 FM.
Sports Hardcore News.
Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back to the rest of the stories. Some concerned stakeholders and indigents of Rumekpe community in Emoa local government area of River State have raised concern over the activities of some individual on the manifold located in the community. Isa Muhammad Obiri, who spoke on behalf of the people, confirmed the visit of some officials of the company taking over from Shell Petroleum Company in company of troops of soldiers and suspected members of the cabals in Rumekbe, who he said have continued to deceive federal government in the name of flushing the pipeline. Mohammed Obiru, who is the leader of the Association of the Niger Delta Upland Communities in River State, said the earlier government realizes that issues surrounding the manifold are spiritual, the better for it to profile better ways of solving them. He emphasized the need for government to declare a state of emergency in every sector and pay more attention to the complaints of Rumekbe people for the sake of the reopening of the manifold for operations.
There's a lot of government, Hilux, Swambogi, everything, manifold, everywhere, militarized, and all targeting to confirm the state of manifold. But one thing I want to raise is the same thing I put them pressure on the company. They will call their contact, the cabal here in Rubeki, and send their local boys to the line where they have done bunkering, and they will vandalize that place. When they try to pressure, they will say it's leaking somewhere. So they have been doing, and I want what the government is facing is completely a tragedy, and there should be a state of emergency in all the sectors in River State until Rumekbe manifold come to full operation, because it's like it's a real cabal to short Mr. President.
Issa Mohammed Aburi expressed concern that despite their complaints of alleged marginalization, the company visited the manifold without proper consultation of the host community.
There was no consultation. They just, the company or the full lifetime I've been telling them everything is in order. What they are starting is not a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. They will want the pressure. There will be water in the line. They continue to wonder what you plan. Not the bucket is the cause of the land. It is not given at the right of way. It is at the manifold directly. Please put it on record that they shouldn't be waiting for the government money flushing, because they want to hold down the president, bring new agenda. And I have something very clear that even the state governor, the local government chairman, if I have my own view that the president has to declare state of emergency.
It would interest you to know that the Rumekbe stakeholder had in recent times attributed the suffering being experienced in Nigeria to alleged marginalization of Rumekbe people, insisting that Nigeria will continue to suffer in all ramifications for denying Rumekbe people basic amenities, including good hospitals, education, electricity, amongst others, despite their contribution to Nigeria's economy. Meanwhile, youths and stakeholders in Abua Kingdom in Abua Odwal, local government area of River State, have decried total neglect, lack of employment and fulfillment of corporate social responsibility by multinationals in the area. The President General of Abua Kingdom Youth Congress, Itode Gospa, and Youth BOT Chairman Etiami Okurubo, in an interview with Today FM's Sandra Kenneth, said the youths had protested twice, but the companies have remained adamant. While calling on the state government and all relevant authorities to intervene, they noted that the companies had also failed to do a formal introduction to the community, but continued in its exploration activities at the detriment of their health and livelihoods. They further stressed the need for introduction, adding that it will help them convey their worries, as they also noted the dangers while demanding for employment and other entitlements.
After seeing and investigating in all these atrocities, the youth says, no, we cannot give all this down again. The youth have gone into 3 types of protests. They have protested the first, second, and the third time, where the sole administrator intervened and also called for a meeting. But as I speak to you, the company has never in anywhere shown a kind of respect to the king or neither the sole administrator and also to the people of Abua.
I'm calling the attention of the state government to come to the aids of Abua youths, because the companies that are operating the oil industry in Abua are trying to cause chaos into the land with the youth, and we who are board members of the youth, trustees of the youth, will never allow them to do that, and we are calling the state government to come to our aid.
On their part, Peace Akioma, who is a representative of the women wing of Abua Youth and the general secretary of the youth group, Alexander Ozu, lamented the continuous damage of their crops and environment due to oil exploration activities, as they disclosed the level of hardship and loss of livelihood it has cost them. They called on government to intervene to ensure a roundtable meeting with all community leaders and the traditional stool and as they expressed how they have been neglected and subjected to abject poverty due to lack of fishing and farming as a result of oil exploration activities.
The multinational company operating in Abua Kingdom have caused a lot of damages to our farmland, whereby our crops are no more producing very well. And in respect of that, the security agency in Abua have also called for the attention and they refused.
Heard the advice of the sole administrator and edged off their protest, looking forward for a date of roundtable talks of the said company, which was scheduled on the 31st of July 2025. They did not come for the meeting and it was rescheduled on the 22nd of August 2025. Surprisingly, information through the security agent has it that the meeting has been put up by the companies, which shows that they are not ready.
Residents of Port Harcourt have continued to decry the surge in renting houses in River State, saying agents are hijacking the rental process for low-income accommodations, such as self-contained and one-bedroom flats. They said house agents are now playing a more dominant role in house renting business, often sidelining landlords and inflating rental prices for personal gain. Some residents in an interview with Today FM's Odinakachi Celestine revealed that house agents now encourage landlords to hike their rent so as to increase their commission, which is calculated as a percentage of the annual rent. One major complaint is the 20% commission fee charged by these house agents, which these residents consider as excessive exploitation. The residents sharing their experiences hinted that the agents now act as gatekeepers, refusing to give out landlords' contacts and insisting that all communication and payments be made through them, which affects low-income earners who struggle to keep up with the harsh economy. They called on the River State government to introduce and enforce laws that will regulate the activities of these agents to make rents affordable to people with meager income and also protect tenants from further exploitation.
That sector is not properly regulated. Hence, it has been open for exploitation, and house agents have utilized it so much to now cause confusion in the whole system. If you ask me, I would say that it should begin to go through some form of regulation. In Lagos and Enugu State, I think the House of Assembly they did eventually pass a law capping the...
I first paid the guy 5,000 for agent registration fee, 5,000 before he can look. We've seen the house. Let me meet with the landlord. He said, no, I will pass through. He even asked the landlord to increase the rent so that in percentage it will be big. That character no good.
1.something million with agent fees and everything. For you to see a house self-contained of 300,000, 350,000 now. Imagine where you get a house and you'll be paying close to about 20% to 25% to an agent. And it's not a good thing to talk about. If there's a way we can regulate a task force to all these things, it will be a better thing.
Moving on, retired military officers from the Nigerian Military School Zaria, set 1974 to 1979, have advocated for government's involvement in running of homes of the elderly and motherless babies' homes across the states. The chairman of the NMS, set 1974 to 1979, retired Air Commodore Ayodeji Odunayo, spoke during their visit to the home of the elderly in Port Harcourt as part of activities marking their annual general meeting. Retired Air Commodore Odunayo, who addressed newsmen after donating some items and cash to the elderly, emphasized the importance of ensuring service to humanity, attributing the choice of meeting in Port Harcourt to efforts of the Nigerian Army, particularly headquarters, 6th Division Nigerian Army Port Harcourt, in curbing security challenges in the state. Retired Air Commodore Odunayo, who is also a professor of computer science, while revealing their resolve to continue to stand by the elderly and less privileged, called for support from individuals, corporate organizations, and the government for the sake of sustaining the existence of those in need.
We feel as part of that reunion, we should do service to humanity. And that is why we have come to the old people's home today to give them some material items and also to bless them financially. That is the essence of our visit today. We identify with them because we know we are getting younger by the day too. And we want to reassure them that they are not alone. We share in their pain, we share in their challenges, and we want to continue to be a blessing to them. We feel that it's important to do this at this point in our lifetime, and so that is the essence of our coming to the old people's home today.
In her speech, the Reverend Sister in charge of the Home of the Elderly in Port Harcourt, Mary Jane Raphael Agobosi, commended the retired military officers from Nigerian Military School Zaria for the gesture, which she said will go a long way in the welfare of the people.
As you think it wise to visit the elderly ones, may God continue to protect and strengthen you and your family. My prayer since 15 years I have been here is to let our children's children take care of us, because I know keeping the elderly ones together is not our custom, but instead of keeping them or locking them up, it's better they bring them here with the help of God, and so we depend solely on charity with the help of individuals and families and the churches. God is good.
Today FM's Uchendu Ajoa reports that the group had earlier visited 6th Division Nigerian Army, where the General Officer commanding 6th Division, Major General Emmanuel Eric Emeka, insisted that the choice of Port Harcourt for the Nigerian Military School Annual General Meeting was testimony to the fact that the South-South is free and safe. The GOC commended their cooperation and togetherness and appreciated their effort to excel in the various fields of endeavor, and urged them to continue to reach out to their members who are not doing well in their career and health-wise. Moving on to the foreign scene, Serbia's populist president has called for dialogue with anti-government protesters in the Balkan country following more than 9 months of demonstrations that have challenged his rule. In a post on his social media page, President Aleksandar Vučić said Serbia has to solve its problems with democratic dialogue, not with violence. In a video address from his office in Belgrade, Vučić said he was ready to speak with the representatives of students and other anti-government protesters, including in TV debates. The months of protest across Serbia were prompted by the deaths of 16 people when the roof on a renovated railway station in Novi Sad collapsed last November. Protesters have blamed corruption for the station disaster and are demanding early elections in the hope of ousting Vučić and his party. They also accused the government of using violence against political rivals and suppressing media freedoms, which the government has denied. The protests were mainly peaceful until earlier this month, when dozens of police officers and civilians were injured in clashes and hundreds were detained. Vučić's second and final 5-year presidential term ends in 2027 when parliamentary elections are due. To end the news, here's a summary of the major stories. The federal government has set a target of 20 million children in its school feeding program by 2026. INEC has announced the registration of over 500,000 Nigerians after its CVR relaunch. We told you that the Benue State House of Assembly has suspended 4 lawmakers for 6 months over alleged plots to impeach the Speaker. On the foreign scene, you also heard that Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has called for democratic dialogue with anti-government protesters. And that's the news, as edited by Stella Sasongo Okuri. For comments and inquiries, please call 0818-389-2850 or send your emails to news@todayfmlive.com. You can also read our stories on www.todayfmlive.com. I am Faustina Uputu. Good evening, and thank you for listening.
Today's news, today's entertainment, today's sports, today's issues. Today on Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt.
What's a successful business without sales? And what is sales without an audience? Well, do you know that you can reach 8 million listeners across 6 states in 2 geopolitical zones all at once? How? With Today 95.1 FM, you can get millions of people to know about your business. And what does that mean to you? More sales. Call 081-389-2850 now for more information. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to pay a fine for an indictment? Then you later found out that there was an already established law to protect you from that penalty. Have you ever been denied a position because of your gender or disability? Have you ever been discriminated, treated unfairly, assaulted or cheated by your landlord, employer, tax collectors, bank, family, business partners, and the police? What if the breach between you and justice is just the right knowledge? I'm sure you've heard that knowledge is power. Join us every Saturday, 10 to 10:30 a.m. on Today 95.1 FM for the program The Law Today, to get acquainted with your legal rights and beneficial interests as a citizen of Nigeria. The Law Today, 10 to 10:30 a.m. every Saturday, is brought to you by Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt. It's been an exciting week. It's been an awesome week. And just in case you missed out on our big stories this week, we got you covered. Rewind comes up every Saturday, 6:30 a.m. And here you get your total rundown of all the big stories and trends for the week in River State. And this is brought to you by your premium talk radio, Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt. Rewind, 6:30 a.m. every Saturday. Don't miss it.
Hello and good evening once again. This is Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt, Voice of the People. And it's time again for a rundown of the foreign news stories that made the headlines in the world today. I'm Faustina Oputu. In the headlines, Trump administration reviews 55 million visa holders for violations. 6 dead, 10 missing after bridge collapses in China. India's parliament bans vast online gambling industry. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky rules out China as security guarantor in a peace deal. Now the news in detail. The civil parties in the treason trial of the former president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila, are demanding tens of billions of dollars in reparations, saying it's in compensation for the violence they have experienced at the hands of rebels in the mineral-rich east of the country. The charges against Joseph Kabila include murder, rape and torture linked to his alleged support for Rwanda-backed M23 rebels who control a large part of the region. Kabila's successor, President Felix Tshisekedi, has accused him of being the brains behind the group. Lawyers for the civil parties say they are seeking $25 billion in reparations at a military court in Kinshasa. However, the eastern provinces of South Kivu, Ituri, and North Kivu are demanding an additional $21 billion and the seizure of the former president's bank assets. At least 5 bodies have been recovered from shallow graves at a site in Kenya where victims of a religious cult are suspected to have been buried. Excavations were ongoing earlier today at the site on the outskirts of Malindi in southeastern Kenya's Kilifi County, where hundreds of members of a doomsday cult were found dead 2 years ago. Government pathologist Richard Njoroge says the authorities are expected to find more remains at the site, adding that at the commencement of the exercise, 27 suspected graves found and 6 exhumed. Njoroge further stated that out of the 6 graves, 5 bodies were found around the area, and 10 different body parts were scattered in different places on the surface. He also added that they are expected to find more graves because the teams had not exhausted the search in a vast area. Away from Africa to the rest of the world. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has disclosed that negotiations will resume immediately for the release of all hostages and an end to the nearly 2-year war in Gaza. Speaking to soldiers near Israel's border with Gaza, he added that he was still set on proven plans for defeating Hamas and capturing Gaza City. Meanwhile, thousands of Palestinians have fled their home in recent days as Israeli tanks edged closer to the densely populated city. His remarks came ahead of a high-level security meeting with defense chiefs and cabinet ministers to approving the operational plans. The Israeli officials believe that 50 people remain captive in Gaza, and at least 20 of whom are thought to be alive. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has renewed calls for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza war. His plea came as Palestinians started fleeing parts of Gaza City after the Israeli military began the first stages of its planned offensive there. Speaking in Japan, where he's attending the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, he said expanded operations would cause massive deaths and destruction in the territory. Israel is pressing ahead with its plan to seize Gaza City despite international criticism of the operation, which is likely to force many more Palestinians to move. It already controls around 75% of the Gaza Strip, which has been largely destroyed and has seen the repeated displacement of large swathes of the population. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has ruled out the chance that China could serve as a security guarantor in the event of a future peace deal with Russia to end the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian president's remarks follow discussions this week between United States and European leaders about how to establish a future peacekeeping force in Ukraine should the war end. Beijing has repeatedly called for a peaceful resolution to the Ukraine war, but its ongoing economic support for Russia has undermined its neutral image with Zelensky and Western leaders. Despite Beijing's ambitions of playing a greater role in mediating international conflicts, the Ukrainian leader's remarks suggest that China will have no role in Russia-Ukraine peace process. Zelensky also added that international security guarantors are needed to ensure that Russia does not resume its attacks on Ukraine after signing a peace deal. Kaja Kallas, the top diplomat of the European Union, EU, has warned against pushing Ukraine to give up territories to Russia as part of a future peace deal. Speaking in her first UK interview since EU leaders joined Donald Trump's White House peace talks with Ukraine, she stated that a program of letting Russia keep Ukrainian territories was a trap that Putin wants to use to walk into. The Donbas region in eastern Ukraine has been long contested by Russia, with military aggression forcing 1.5 million Ukrainians to flee over the past decade. Ukraine has consistently rejected conceding Donbas to the Kremlin in exchange for peace, though Trump stressed the need for swapping of territories. Kallas, who has been placed on the Kremlin's wanted list, also spoke at length about credible and robust security guarantees for Ukraine. India's parliament has passed a sweeping bill banning online gambling after government figures showed companies had stripped $2.3 billion annually from 450 million people. The ban affects platforms for card games, poker and fantasy sports, including India's widely popular homegrown fantasy cricket apps, leaving the fate of the key sponsor for India's national cricket team in question. Dream 11, India's biggest fantasy sports gaming platform, was named on July 2023 as the country's lead sponsor for 3 years, with its logo splashed on Team India's jerseys. No announcement has been made by the Board of Control for Cricket in India, BCCI, regarding that key sponsor. The Promotion and Regulation of Online Gaming Bill was passed by both Houses of Parliament and criminalizes the offering, promotion and financing of such games, with offenders facing up to 5 years in prison. 6 people have been killed and 10 missing after part of a bridge under construction collapsed earlier today in northwest China. Newsmen disclosed that 15 workers and a project manager were on site at the time, and the death toll was initially reported as 7, but subsequent reports put it at 6. The bridge on the Sichuan Qinghai Railway is the world's largest span double-track continuous steel truss arc bridge. It is also China's first railway steel truss arc bridge spanning the Yellow River and the country's second longest. The images published on the state media shows the partially built bridge, its middle section missing, and 2 giant scaffolding towers and several cranes alongside it. Hundreds of rescue workers were mobilized for the search and rescue operation, Jinhua said. Industrial accidents are fairly common in China due to vague regulations and tax safety standards. In December last year, 13 people went missing after a cave-in at a construction site for a major railway in the southern Chinese city of Shenzhen. There were no reports of survivors. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has paid an emotional tribute to soldiers killed while fighting for Russia in its war against Ukraine, saying his heart aches in the readmission of military losses. Kim made the statement at a ceremony in Pyongyang, where he met with commanders of a unit that had fought for Russia in the western Kursk region. He praised them as heroic army by pinning commendation badges on each soldier's uniforms. The ceremony was also tearful, with Kim meeting with bereaved family members who were seen sobbing and paying tribute to soldiers' photos on the wall. Is seen embracing crying children and embracing soldiers as authorities holding bouquet in celebration of the unit that had returned. A court in Thailand has dismissed a high-profile case against the country's former Prime Minister, Thaksin Shinawatra, over allegations of violating the country's strict laws on royal defamation. His lawyer, Winyat Chatmotri, said the court dismissed the charges against Thaksin, ruling that the evidence presented was insufficient. Outside the court, Thaksin's supporters erupted in cheers after hearing the verdict. Thailand's interim Prime Minister Phumtham Wechayachai welcomed the court's decision, but said it will have no political impact as it was an independent judicial process. Phumtham also stated that the ruling Pheu Thai Party, which was founded by Thaksin, continues to have high morale despite the legal hurdles faced by Shinawatra family. And the U.S. is reviewing the records of more than 55 million U.S. visa holders to assess if they have broken conditions for entry or stay in the country. People with U.S. visas will be under continuous vetting, and the visas will be revoked if there are indications of overstays, criminal activity, threat to public safety, engaging in any form of terrorist activity, or providing support to a terrorist organization. President Donald Trump has made anti-immigration the cornerstone of his second administration, from mass deportations and full-on travel bans on countries to revoking 6,000 student visas. As part of the wide-ranging review, prospective students and visitors to the U.S. will be subjected to social media vetting, with officials looking for any indications of hostility towards their citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles of the United States. State Department officers have also been instructed to spot individuals who advocate for, aid, or support designated foreign terrorists and other threats to national security, or who perpetrate unlawful anti-Semitic harassment or violence. And that story from the United States concludes tonight's edition of The World Today. It's produced by Uloma Wosu of the News Department. But before we go, here's a summary of the stories that made the headlines. The Trump administration has reviewed 55 million visa holders for violation. We told you that 6 people have died, 10 missing after a bridge collapsed in China. You heard that India's parliament has banned vast online gambling industry. And finally, we told you that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has ruled out China as security guarantor in a peace deal. Until same time next week, do have a lovely weekend. Thank you for listening. I am Faustina Oputu.
Unleash the power of the airwaves with the ultimate radio experience. Tune in to Today 95.1 FM, the voice of the people. Don't just listen, immerse yourself.
That is 100% true.
The station with the...
As the voice of the people, we make sure that no one misses out on Today 95.
With the...
As the voice of the people, we make sure that no one misses out on Today 95.1 FM. There's something for everyone.
Our tech show, because tech is new money. Our kids show, because we love the little ones.
Our Gospelration, because it's the moment of truth. Our High Life show, because High Life is vintage.
Our sports show with the adrenaline. Our midnight show, because we care about your love life.
Our Nostalgia Drive, because old is gold. Our show for young people, because Gen Z code is on.
Our Pidgin Bit, because na Naija we dey. Our book review, because books are a mirror. Our big stories, because big things only.
Our health shows with seasoned health experts, because we care that you're healthy. Our eyewitness report, because we want to hear from you. Our reggae show, because Rastafari.
One love.
BBC World Service, I'm Charles Gitonga in Nairobi with Focus on Africa. The 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development concludes in Japan. We hear about the origins of it and its importance for Africa's youth.
We often forget that it's actually Japan that launched the first multilateral summit with African countries, which was TICAD in 1993.
Hué Succès Masra, the former Prime Minister of Chad, now facing 20 years in prison. And did you know that there are 4 distinct species of the African giraffe?
It's tall, it's got beautiful long legs and eyelashes, etc. But when you do look at them and then you know their coat patterns, they are quite distinct between the 4 species.
That's all on the BBC Tonight in Focus. First, the news.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The United Nations says the famine in Gaza has been caused by the systematic obstruction of aid supplies by Israel. Speaking after a global hunger monitor confirmed famine conditions in Gaza City, the UN humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher said the territory was just a few hundred meters from food and pleaded for Israel to open the borders. Rick Peppercorn from the WHO describes conditions in the territory.
In July alone,
the nutrition cluster reported that more than 12,000 children were identified as acutely malnourished. It was the highest monthly figure ever recorded and a six-fold increase since the start of the year.
Israel has repeated its claim there is no famine in Gaza, but the Monitor, the IPC, said more than 130,000 Palestinian children under 5 were now at risk of dying from malnutrition in Gaza. It said the dire situation was likely to expand from Gaza City to other parts of the territory by the end of next month. Rushdie Abu Alouf explains the reason.
Very little allowed from Israel and some grown up locally, but the prices are extremely high. I mean, the 1 kilo of tomato this morning cost 120 shekel, which is about $4. Nobody can afford to buy. Some people say that they have not eaten fresh food for the last 5-6 months. I have been talking to a mother. She said that his son has never tasted fruit or vegetables in his entire life. He's 3.5 years or 4 years.
FBI agents are searching the home of John Bolton, President Trump's former national security advisor. Mr. Bolton served in the first Trump administration, but later became one of his loudest critics, saying he was unfit to serve. Bernd de Busman is at the White House.
These searches are at least in part about the handling of classified documents. Now, we don't have more details than that, but this is an issue that's been ongoing for quite some time. In the past, John Bolton wrote a book which was subject to a lawsuit by the Department of Justice, which accused him of mishandling classified information about his time here at the White House in 2018 and 2019. That lawsuit was subsequently dropped, but he's still very much been in the sights of the administration and President Trump in particular.
Hungary and Slovakia say their supplies of Russian oil could be suspended for at least 5 days, following a Ukrainian strike on a pipeline facility in Russia. In a letter to the European Commission, they say they are largely dependent on the Druzhba pipeline. The EU has reduced its dependency on Russian oil since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, but Hungary and Slovakia have remained closer to the Kremlin. World News from the BBC. The head of NATO has called for robust security guarantees for Ukraine to ensure Russia honours any peace deal. Speaking after talks with President Zelensky in Kyiv, Mark Rutte said the alliance was working with Ukraine to define the guarantees.
When we talk about security guarantees, let's also agree that there are two layers. The first layer has to be for the Ukrainian armed forces to be as strong as possible. And the second layer has to be the security guarantees provided by Europe and the United States.
Mr. Zelensky said Russia was doing everything it could to stop a meeting between him and President Putin from taking place. Iran's foreign ministry has said talks will resume next week with diplomats from Britain, France and Germany over Tehran's nuclear program as the three countries consider whether to reimpose sanctions. The European powers and the EU have warned that time is running out for Iran to agree to a satisfactory solution to their concerns over nuclear enrichment. Kenyan officials say 9 more corpses have been recovered from graves in the coastal Malindi region, as well as body parts from 10 other people. They believe they are connected to the more than 400 bodies found in the Shakahola forest 2 years ago. They were members of a doomsday cult who'd been encouraged to starve themselves to death by Paul Nthengi Mackenzie, who's been charged with murder. Sports officials say South Korea is being sounded out about hosting the 2029 Asian Winter Games. The event is meant to be in Saudi Arabia, but there have been delays at the planned Trajana mountain resort. It's meant to have 30 kilometers of ski runs covered in artificial snow. But like many of the projects linked to the futuristic Neom city, it's struggling to complete the project on time. BBC News.
Hello, I'm Charles Gitonga and here is what's coming up for you on this edition of Focus on Africa. The 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development concludes in Japan. We hear about the origins of it and its importance for Africa's youth. Why has Chad sentenced its former Prime Minister to 20 years in prison?
although his political party is one of the youngest in the country, although himself is one of the youngest opposition leaders, he brought a new way of being in the opposition in terms of strong capability of mobilizing the street, but also a very strong capability mobilizing the international spheres and also standing against the regime.
And it's now official. There are 4 distinct species of the African giraffe. Which ones are they and how do we conserve them?
If you know where you are, geography, you can actually figure out which giraffe is where. So whether you're in certain parts of Kenya, you'll know that in Nairobi National Park, they're a Maasai giraffe. If you go up to Lake Nakuru, they are Nubian giraffe. And if you go up into the northern areas, they are definitely reticulated giraffe.
It's Friday, August 22nd. First, we go to Yokohama, Japan. Dozens of African governments have sent delegations to Japan this week to participate in the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, or TICAD. It's the 9th edition of the event, which was first held more than 30 years ago and then given a new lease of life under former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Current Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is the host of this year's event in Yokohama, and he called for an economic free trade zone encompassing Japan and Africa.
Today, in conjunction with TICAD 9, I would like to propose the Indian Ocean Africa Economic Zone Initiative. To contribute to the development of Africa, Japan will work together with the people of the region to achieve this goal.
Several African heads of state made the trip to Japan to take part in the conference, including Kenya's President William Ruto, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, and Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was also in attendance, using his speech to call for greater African representation on the global stage.
We meet at a time of interconnected crises and deep inequalities. Tackling these crises requires a clear focus not only on development for Africa, but on development with Africa. Africa must have a stronger voice in shaping the decisions that affect its future. That includes long overdue reform of the Security Council, where incredibly Africa has no permanent member and other regions remain underrepresented.
The conference is held every 3 years, and its goal is to strengthen ties between Japan and Africa. This year's meeting was aimed at boosting trade. Japan offered to deploy its digital abundance to help Africa tackle some of its challenges using artificial intelligence. Several Japanese companies are keen to get in on the act, pledging to work with African governments and increase investment on the continent. But what does all this mean for Africa's youth and the challenges they face? Janabu Hisse is a research fellow at the France-based Foundation for Strategic Research. She has published a research paper entitled Japan in Africa, a discreet yet influential partner amid growing international competition. I started by asking her how far back Japan's relationship with Africa goes.
Japan is one of the most overlooked partners in Africa, mainly because there's also been a huge focus on other players like China or Russia or even Western countries. But we often forget that it's actually Japan that launched the first multilateral summit with African countries, which was TICAD in 1993, so well before China in 2000, for example, or even Russia a few years ago. It's been engaged on the African continent for decades. They even started in the 70s in an attempt to diversify their energy and resource supplies. But TICAD was really a turning point for Japan because the platform allowed them to move beyond pure aid dependency and pure passive diplomacy to a more proactive role in Africa in an attempt to actually raise their international status, but also to counterbalance Chinese influence. It's one of the factors that shaped Japan-African policy.
So just something you said that got me curious here. If Japan's involvement on the continent, is older than some of the other bigger players now, China, Russia, and probably some of the partners in the European Union, how come then we don't hear much about it? Did the influence start early but it didn't grow as much, or what exactly happened?
It's a little bit of both, actually. First of all, Japan is an actor that has always been more discreet in its engagement. It counterbalances the Chinese model, which is more turned towards resource extraction and speed delivery, where Japan has been emphasizing long-term relations. I think in 2024, Japan's FDI in Africa only accounted for 0.5% in value, which is barely nothing, which also shows that Africa is not that much of a priority for Japan, nor is Japan that much of a priority for Africa. In terms of trade, Japan trade volume with Africa only accounts to around $24 billion, which is way lower than the $286 billion of China and even $295 last year, but even lower than other actors like India, Western countries. It's only comparable to Russia, actually. The trade volume also accounts around the same amount.
Interesting, because they've had a summit, the Tokyo Investment Conference on African Development, TICAD, for the last 32 years. Is this conference the only way that Japan invests in Africa? Is it the main conduit for investment?
TICAD has been a huge platform for Japan's engagement on the continent, but and so he actually pleaded for more private investments on the African continent and more links between private investment and public investment. For Japan, economic priorities mainly lie in Southeast Asia, for example. I think Japan invests way more in Singapore than on the African continent alone. But there's been efforts in the last years to actually raise Japan investment on the continent and to have Japanese companies more engaged on the continent. There's been, for example, partnerships with India to actually encourage Japanese companies based in India to penetrate the African continent. Africa has been integrated to the Free Indo-Pacific Initiative, and during the current TICAD, the current Prime Minister advocated for the creation of an economic zone linking the Indian Ocean to Africa.
That's Janabu Hise from the Foundation for Strategic Research. Chad's opposition leader, who is also the country's former prime minister, Succès Masra, was sentenced to 20 years in prison earlier this month. He was accused, alongside 67 co-defendants, mostly from the same Ngambaye ethnic group, of inciting violence and hate speech on social media, leading to the death of dozens in a clash between herders and farmers in the village of Mandakao. In May of this year, he was detained and formally charged. Conflict between Masra and the sitting president, Mahamat Idris Deby, is nothing new. He rose to prominence as one of the main opponents of the Chadian regime, particularly after the death of President Idris Deby, Mahamat's father, in 2021. In 2022, Masra left Chad after a bloody crackdown on his followers. He returned 2 years later under an amnesty and went on to run against Deby in the 2024 presidential election, which Deby won with more than 61% support. Masra rejected these results, claiming that the vote was rigged. He later agreed to serve as prime minister after signing a reconciliation deal with Deby. Masra has appealed his sentencing and denied the charges against him. I spoke to Remaji Hoinati, senior researcher, Central Africa and Lake Chad Basin at the Institute for Security Studies, who started by giving me a brief history of Chad's political climate.
Chad is a former French colony that accessed independence in 1960. But as a country, Chad has experienced a very unstable political history, with the first coup d'etat happening as early as 1975. And then onward, the country also experienced many episodes of civil war, ending by Hissène Habré, one of the warlords at that time, taking power in 1982. In its effort to reunify the country, he ended up setting a kind of a very bloody dictatorship with more than 40 people killed. And one of Hissène Habré's lieutenants, talking about late Idriss Déby, managed to take power with support of foreign power like France, to take power in December 1990 with promise of democracy. But although the country entered the process of democratization with many elections, it was more a kind of stage democracy rather than a substantive democracy.
Let's talk about Succès Masra and the role that he's played in the country's political landscape.
Succès Masra is one of the newest political opposition leaders with his political party called Les Transformateurs. And he brought on the stage a kind of novelty in terms of a strong capability of mobilization at the beginning through social medias, but also he managed to mobilize the youth that actually is most of the population of the country and create a kind of momentum in terms of the capability of a political party mobilizing people, but also standing firm against the regime. His capability of mobilizing the streets actually accumulated to the 2020 October demonstration that have actually been repressed very bloodily, with more than 150 people killed. Although his political party is one of the youngest in the country, although himself is one of the youngest opposition leaders, he brought in the political arena in Chad a new way of being in the opposition in terms of strong capability of mobilizing the street, but also a very strong capability mobilizing the international spheres and also standing against the regime.
If he came back to serve as Prime Minister of the country, where did it all go wrong?
Any political arrangement is opportunistic. So I think that at the moment that the agreement actually happened, the transition authorities needs to show this face of dialoguing and opening the political game. And at that time also Masra Succès needed this arrangement to get back on the political stage. So I think he have been appointed Prime Minister, and then when the country was to start the electoral campaign, what happened was that the president of the transition were running as candidate, and his prime minister were also running as candidate. So I think this is where most of the difficulties started, because they have to fight face to face in the electoral campaign. The campaign have been very strong and demonstrate a great popularity of the prime minister as the opponent of the president.
But when he was Prime Minister, what kind of Prime Minister was Succès? Was he a unifying figure or a divisive one, in your opinion?
In Chad, under the different regimes that we have been experiencing since 1919, the position of a prime minister is always a position that on the paper goes with a lot of power. But when Masra Succès came as a prime minister, he didn't have most of the main ministry positions that will actually help him deploy his governmental action, meaning all those ministries actually were under the control of the president rather than the prime minister. So it should be said that he tried hard, but he didn't escape the fate of most of the prime ministers that the Chad have been experiencing, meaning on the ground ministers with no real might or capabilities as per the constitution or their prerogatives.
So tell me then about these intercommunal conflicts. Who are these different groups involved? What are the divisions between those groups? And also how Masra is connected to all this?
He is deemed connected at least through the trial that he experienced and the accusations, because actually he has been accused of being one of the people that instigate the conflict based on an audio recording of him that dated actually 2 years before the conflict. And in that audio, he's accused of calling people to exterminate another community. Those conflicts are not new in the country. For many years, there have been conflicting relationships between farmer communities and herders due to many reasons. The first